The stench reaches you first, a rancid braid of sweat, horsehair, tallow smoke, and something darker, like raw iron left too long in the sun. It coils beneath the canvas roof of the royal pavilion the night Granada finally buckles. Every soldier in the camp blames the wind, yet the truth stands 4 paces away. Queen Isabella, small-boned, green-eyed, and reeking like a battlefield grave. She hasn't immersed her body in water for 3 unbroken years. She won't, she swore, until the crimson walls of the Alhambra surrender or burn. Tonight those walls glimmer on the horizon, and the fumes of her vow seep into every lung. You taste copper on your tongue as the heralds thunder out the Moorish capitulation. A roar rolls across the plain, armor rattling, rosaries clacking, men sobbing at last in relief. Isabella barely blinks. Her gauntleted hands rest on the pommel of her saddle, knuckles chafed raw by leather and frost. Under the moon, flecks of dirt speckle her cheek like dried blood. The dirt is not just from the march. It's a second, hardened skin-proof. She has shared every hardship her army endured. When the cheers die, she lifts one finger, wordless, and the whole host kneels in the damp grass. The earth trembles, even the war horses bend their steaming necks. Only then does the queen allow herself to breathe. She smells what you smell: rot, sweat, incense, victory. It is the odor of a promise, kept of a body willingly sacrificed to faith and throne. Her chaplain whispers that a hot tub has been drawn for her inside the tent. His voice wavers, for he can't decide whether this final ablution will cleanse Spain of Islam or strip the crown of its daily reminder of piety. Isabella's lips quirk, neither smile nor sneer. "Bring me not a bath," she says, the words crisp as cracked ice. "Bring me the emir's banners to trample first." People call her La Reina sin baños, the queen, without baths, because rumor insists she has submerged herself in water only twice since childhood. Birth in 1451, a second daughter nobody expected to reign, counted as the first time the midwives sponged her clean. The second, gossip claims, was the day she married Ferdinand of Aragon. At 18, another vow, another lukewarm basin, quickly forgotten, Espiri. Whether the tally is exact or not, no longer matters. The legend has teeth, and the legend leads men into sieges they once deemed impossible. She was raised, as you were not, in the cold, rat-gnawed fortress of Arevalo, after her father Juan II died and her half-brother Enrique exiled their Portuguese mother to brood among cobwebbed halls. Mold and damp straw flavored every breath the young infanta drew. Scripture and swordplay were her only toys. Enrique, limp in both limb and will, preferred lute music to lances, and earned the court's whisper, El Impotente. In 1465, the nobles even hoisted him from the throne in public mockery, seating a straw effigy of the worthless king on a mule facing backward. Isabella watched the spectacle from a balcony, hands clasped so tight that half-moons of blood stained her palms. She never forgot the smell of wet straw, or the cackling laughter of men drunk on treason. Years later, when those same grandees begged her to replace Enrique, she agreed on her own terms. She would marry whom she chose. She would unify Castile and Aragon to forge a hammer against the Moors. And she would purge every whiff of Islamic custom from Iberian soil, starting with the luxurious bathhouses that still dotted conquered cities. Cleanliness, she declared, was an infidel obsession. Better to be dirty in God's grace than scented in damnation. The court physicians gasped. The monks nodded gravely and prayed harder. Thus the vow, no bath until Granada kneels. 3 winters passed, and her ladies fainted weakly from the musk trapped in brocade gowns and closed carriage interiors. Physicians begged her to rinse at least her hands in rosewater after childbirth. 10 children delivered in campaign tents. But Isabella only wiped the umbilical blood on coarse linen and reached for her sword belt. Again, she believed the Virgin protected what soap could not. Now the Alhambra flares like a dying coal across the valley. Drums rumble. You feel your ribs vibrate with each boom. A page kneels beside the queen with a silver basin, trembling as he offers a cloth soaked in lavender. A single wipe of that perfumed rag, and every soldier would sense the ritual complete. The war truly ended. Isabella's eyes green, unblinking fix on the cloth. For one shuddering heartbeat, you think she might relent. But thunder splits the sky. Cold rain spits across the camp, turning dust to thin mud. Isabella snatches the lavender cloth and presses it, not to her face, but to her war horse's flank, scrubbing away the crusted foam. The message is brutal and crystalline. The queen's body is still in service, still unredeemed. No baptism until all of Spain kneels, Moors and nobles alike. A gust of wind whips open the pavilion flap. Inside, torches flicker, revealing a steaming wooden tub, clear water swirling like liquid glass, petals floating atop. For a moment the camp hushes, every pair of lungs holding the same question. Will she finally step in? Your own heartbeat drums in your ears. The curiosity gap yawns, razor-edged and bottomless. What if she collapses from infection? What if the stench is all that keeps her enemies at bay? What if, once submerged, she discovers her skin has forgotten how to feel water? She hands the reins to her squire and strides into the tent. Canvas falls, severing your view. Outside, soldiers shuffle, muttering bets. Minutes stretch like centuries. The rain intensifies, drumming on helms and shields. You smell wet metal, drenched leather, and under it all, the faint ghost of lavender, no stronger than before. Then Isabella emerges, armor off, but cloak still wrapped tight. Not a drop darkens the cloak's hem. She has not bathed, nor will she tonight. Instead, she lifts the emir's silken standard, freshly surrendered, and thrusts it into the mud. It splatters filth across your boots as she grinds the crimson threads beneath a bare heel. The queen's foot, caked in grime, leaves a print that steams in the cold air. "There," she says, voice hoarse yet triumphant. Spain is cleansed enough. The basin inside cools, untouched. The petals wilt. Across the camp, men whisper that Isabella's vow may never end, because once you trade purity of the flesh for purity of the soul, what measure can return you? The question sticks like a bone in your throat, choking sleep from the night ahead. Somewhere in the darkness, a monk begins to chant, and the rain decides to fall harder. The smell of wet banners lingers long after dawn, but Isabella's mind is already somewhere else inside the mildew-slick corridors of Arevalo, where she spent her first 9 winters listening to her mother sob through stone walls. Isabella of Portugal had been only 19 when she wed 42-year-old Juan II, a transaction sealed with incense and Latin vows, but poisoned by loneliness. Before her 25th birthday, she was banished here, nerves fraying into what physicians meekly called female melancholy. Isabella remembers the odor of that grief, sour milk and candle smoke, and the way rats chewed through her dolls at night, while her brother Enrique paraded in silk. At court, the memory sharpens. April 27, 1465. A dusty Castilian square boils with nobles, howling for blood. Enrique, nicknamed El Impotente, the impotent, has been publicly dethroned in effigy. A straw dummy wearing his crown is hoisted backward on a mule, its stuffed legs flapping like broken wings. 15-year-old Isabella watches from a balcony, nails digging crescents into her palms, tasting metal as the crowd spits on the puppet king. When the dummy topples, she hears bones crack, even though the thing is only straw. That night she swears 2 oaths. She will never let her rule become a mockery, and she will never, ever wash away the dirt of suffering that binds her to the common soldier. Years later, the second and last full bath of her life arrives on a creaking cart. It is October 1469, the secret wedding to Ferdinand of Aragon. The nuns scrub her raw in lukewarm water laced with violets, stripping months of grime until her skin feels flayed. She cries out, not from pain, but from terror that purity will make her fragile. At the altar, she refuses the ancient gesture of handing her groom a slipper, declaring, "We are equals." Castile kneels to no one. The court gasps, yet Ferdinand only smiles, already tasting the steel in his bride's resolve. Purity, she decides, must now be measured in ashes, not soap. So when the Grand Inquisitor Torquemada lights his first stake in Seville, Isabella rides through the crowd on a white palfrey, her unwashed hair whipping in oily ropes across her cheeks. 9,000 souls will burn over 17 years, their screams climbing the sky in place of hymns. The scent of roasting flesh overwhelms even the musk that clings to her linen. Some courtiers gag behind gloved hands, but the queen inhales deeply, each exhalation a sermon. Sin can't be rinsed, only cauterized. Between pyres and sieges, she bears 10 children, most of them in flea-ridden tents. Midwives mop the afterbirth with rough wool. Isabella merely bites down on a leather strap, then laces herself back into armor, blood still crusting beneath the breastplate. Her ladies beg her to at least rinse her wounds. She answers by quoting Job, "Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" The question curdles into silence. No one dares remind her that pus, too, is part of God's design. Ferdinand, once dazzled by her grit, begins to grumble about the stench seeping into their shared sheets. On winter nights, he sleeps with a clove of garlic tucked under his nose. Yet still the sour-sweet bouquet of sweat, horse, and battlefield creeps into his dreams. Their quarrels slice through cold corridors. Money for artillery, money for spies, money always scarce for the Genoese sailor haunting the antechambers with maps of seas no Christian has crossed. She promises Columbus nothing, until the crescent moon is hammered from Granada's flagpoles. Only then, she vows, will gold flow west. And so the vow festers, not merely no bathhouse, those infidel luxuries, but no soaking bucket, no drizzle from heaven, unless caught fully clothed. She bans Moorish hammams throughout occupied towns. Marble fountains are smashed, cedar roofs blackened with pitch. Soldiers joke that each demolished bathhouse is another drop of water Isabella owes God. Yet fever stalks the camps. Dysentery, sweat sickness, buboes swelling like purple grapes in children's groins. Physicians whisper that cleanliness might spare lives. She silences them with a look sharp enough to sever tongues. Still, even stone fractures under weather. In the spring of 1491, while the army trenches around Granada, a sword slash across her calf festers. Yellow pus beads beneath the scab. From his tent, Ferdinand sends rosewater, compresses, and a letter pleading, "My queen, wash the wound or lose the leg." Isabella burns the note over a candle whose flame gutters in her breath. She presses a scrap of dirty linen to the gash and prays harder. By miracle or sheer bitter luck, the infection recedes. The legend swells. God prefers her dirty. Yet another contagion looms, carried on Columbus's ships, even as the bells of victory still echo. Sailors call it the morbo gallico, the French disease. Skin blossoms into ulcers. Bones melt like tallow. Isabella reads the physician's report. Nostrils twitching at phantom odors, rotting fish, dead roses. Tastes she cannot scrub from memory because she has never learned the relief of cleansing. She wonders, for the first time, whether water might be less cruel than faith. But the thought is a sin, and sins must be starved. Night settles over the captured city. In the torchlit alleys of the Alhambra, fountains trickle, mocking her with songs of cool marble and jasmine. She orders them drained at dawn. The Moors may depart with their lives, but not with their habits. Alone in her commandeered chamber, she removes her cloak. Sweat darkens the chemise at her spine, an inkblot blooming over parchment-white skin. She lifts a jug of water, perhaps to drink, perhaps to pour. Her hand trembles so violently the jug slips, shattering on the tiles. Water splashes her ankles, shockingly cold. For an instant, she is 8 years old again, toes in a spring brook near Arevalo, laughing while her brother Alfonso shouts that trout hide beneath the moss. A memory so clean, it almost blinds her. Then the present rushes back. Broken clay, spilled water, a queen who cannot step over her own legend. Isabella kneels, scoops the shards into her palms, and cuts herself. Blood streaks her wrists, mingling with the water in muddy rivulets. She presses the mess against her face, smearing iron and earth across her cheeks like war paint. Outside, priests chant the Te Deum. Inside, the unwashed queen rocks on her knees, cradling broken pottery, praying that faith be stronger than longing. Behind her, the final intact fountain gurgles one last lullaby before sunrise, silences it forever. A hot wind slithers across the Vega of Granada. The summer Columbus returns, thick with tar, salt, and something uncanny like mango skins left to rot in a convent courtyard. The caravels anchor at Palos de la Frontera, hulls creaking, decks crawling with sailors whose eyes burn yellow around the edges. Isabella stands on the pier, refusing the parasol Ferdinand offers. Sunstroke is a penance she understands. Yet despite noon heat, the queen's own odor, stale iron, aged wool, still curls upward, wrestling the exotic reek blowing off the ships. The admiral bows, feathered cap trembling in his fists. Behind him shuffle 6 copper-skinned strangers shackled at the ankle, naked but for crucifixes hastily hung around their necks. One, barely a boy, flinches as gulls scream overhead. Isabella's gaze pins Columbus first, the captives second, and finally the horizon, where Africa and Al-Andalus once met in her nightmares. She tastes brine and cloves on the wind and wonders. Does the ocean wash sins or merely spread them thinner? Columbus unfurls a fragment of gold, jagged, glittering, smeared with dark streaks you first mistake for pitch. Up close, you see they are dried blood. "Untold wealth, your Catholic Majesty," he crows, voice hoarse from months of salted fish and mutiny, enough to feed crusades from Jerusalem to the very gates of hell. Ferdinand's pupils dilate like a man offered forbidden fruit. Isabella inhales, the sour musk of her own body sharp against the metallic tang of the nugget. "We shall build cathedrals, not crusades," she murmurs, though every listener hears the tremor of temptation in her throat. That night, storms clap over Andalusia. Rain lashes tent canvas outside the hastily erected royal quarters. Lightning turns puddles white for split-second flashes, carving silhouettes of masts like gallows. Isabella remains inside, cloak stiff with dried sweat, fingers clamped around a rosary made from olive pits. Thunder rattles even her hardened bones, but what rattles louder is the cough of the captive boy in the adjoining chamber. Each racking spasm ends with a wet hiss, as if his lungs leak seawater. 3 days later, pustules erupt along the sailors' groins, purplish and weeping. Physicians call it nothing they have catalogued. They slice into boils and pray the humors drain. They do not. Flesh blackens, noses collapse, ribs push through skin like pickets through canvas. The disease spreads inland on mule trains before the court realizes contagion rides along. Isabella's confessor pleads with her to flee to Segovia. She refuses. Granada fell by grit, and so will this invisible siege. Yet fear worms its own tunnels. At midnight, Ferdinand sluices himself in rosewater behind a silken screen, gulping the fragrance as though it could fumigate dread from his lungs. Isabella watches, expression unreadable. The steam from his basin coils upward like pagan incense. She reaches out, traces a finger through the vapor, then wipes the moisture on the underside of her sleeve where no one will see the damp stain. By autumn, their firstborn son Juan lies shivering in Toledo, tongue too swollen to recite the creed. The prince's physicians beg for the queen. Her presence might anchor him to the living. She rides day and night, arriving filthy, lice chewing at her scalp. The stench precedes her into the bedchamber. Candles gutter as if oxygen itself recoils. Juan's glazed eyes twitch open. For a breath he seems to smile, at the familiar scent of battle camps and mother's armor. Then he stiffens, jaw locking, pupils fixing on a heaven he will reach within the hour. When the prince's breath stops, Isabella bends, placing her lips to his forehead. Courtiers gasp. No mother kisses a corpse whose skin already models. She does. Her tears carve pale streaks down grime-thick cheeks, mixing sorrow with salt, sweat, death. A lady-in-waiting retches into a linen veil. Another faints at the smell of decay, mingling with the odor that has become a second crown on Isabella's head. Grief cracks something brittle in the queen, yet not the vow. Instead, she doubles down. She forbids court laundresses to rinse her gowns. Cleansing is now a badge of betrayal. Anyone caught sprinkling her chambers with lavender is whipped. As plague shadows Castile, rumors spread faster. God kept her alive at Malaga, at Baeza, at the Pass of Loja, because she never scrubbed away suffering. Villagers hang horseshoes over doors, hoping the queen's invisible armor of filth will shield them too. But disease is a subtler executioner than cannon fire. It takes her heir, and then her daughter Isabel, withered in childbirth. Then Isabel's infant, born blue and gone by sundown. Each coffin lowers into earth, damp with winter rain. And each time Isabella stands unmoving, mud splattering up the hem of the same unwashed mourning gown. She is 43, yet looks 60, skin gray beneath layers of dust. The court painters invent new pigments, ashen ochre, to match her complexion. One November dawn, her youngest child, the babe Maria, wakes screaming guttural animal. The nursemaid peels back swaddling to reveal lesions, blooming like nightshade across the infant's belly. Isabella jerks the baby from startled arms, presses the fevered body against her armor-clad chest. Sweat and pus seep into the queen's tunic. She rocks, chanting fragments of psalms until the voice cracks into primal keening. Ferdinand, powerless, grips the doorway, retching at the combined stench of sepsis and steel. Maria's cries fade by dusk. That night, a Jesuit physician corners Ferdinand in the corridor. Whispered counsel, the queen must be washed. Her body festers with miasma, perhaps even breeds the very pestilence that slaughters your line. Ferdinand's silence hangs like smoke. He knows doctrine. To wash his wife by force would be sacrilege. Or worse, a confession that faith built on grime is no faith. Yet dynasties crumble for less. The following evening, torches flicker through the Alhambra's drained fountains. 4 hand-picked nuns, silent, steeled, approach the queen's chamber carrying pails of rainwater and rough soap made from ash and lard. Isabella lies awake on a travel cot, rosary slipping through fingers raw from prayer. She smells them before she sees them. Pine resin, lye, determination. Her eyes snap open. Your Majesty, the eldest whispers. God works also through water. Lightning claws the sky outside, illuminating her gaunt face. She rises slowly, chainmail creaking like old timbers. If he wills water, she answers, he will deliver it himself. Then, with the speed of a veteran soldier, she upends the first pail, drenching the rush-strewn floor. Steam rises where water meets braziers, filling the room with hiss and shadow. The nuns back away, clutching crucifixes. Isabella's laugh, a ragged rasp, echoes off tiles, part victory, part madness. In the corridor, Ferdinand hears the commotion. For a heartbeat, he wavers king versus wife, devotion versus dynasty. He steps forward, and the torch guttering above him snuffs out, plunging him into pitch. The choice is swallowed by darkness. When light flares again, he finds himself walking the other direction, toward the council room, leaving his queen alone with her demons and her vow. Outside, thunder rolls west, toward the new world of jungles and gold. Inside, the unwashed queen crouches amid puddles, palms flat on soaked tiles, breathing steam like dragon's breath. Water touches her knees, her wrists, yet she refuses to call it baptism. Somewhere in the palace, another infant coughs. Somewhere in the Americas, another village wilts under unseen plagues. And Isabella, sticky with dirt and holy terror, whispers to the empty room, "What am I, if I am clean?" The palace corridors smell of scorched tallow and damp limestone, but beneath it lurks a sweeter odor sickness, ripening in the queen's own blood. By 1500, you notice crimson stains on the linens she refuses to change. Thin at first, then thick clots that seep through wool, like rust through chainmail. Physicians whisper of a woman's cancer, yet no scalpel may touch royalty, and certainly no cleansing water. Isabella answers their pleas with a sentence colder than marble. "Let my womb perish before my vow. The vow has outlived princes. It will outlive her too." Fresh grief only whets her resolve. When rumors spread that converted Jews still wash on Friday evenings, she signs the Alhambra decree, sentencing thousands to exile, unless they embrace baptism or abandon soap forever. Hearts groan under Torah scrolls, pewter basins, and cedar-scented towels flung into bonfires outside city walls. Flames paint the night blood orange, and the fat of melting candles mingles with the fat of roasting books. 9,000 have already burned at the stake during her reign, branded heretics by Torquemada's hooded familiars. Now, entire families flee east, clutching children and rusty keys, praying the stench of ash does not follow. Inside Granada's emptied bathhouses, mold claims the mosaics, each green bloom a slow graffiti spelling judgment. Isabella walks those corridors at dusk, armored footsteps echoing off cracked marble. She breathes deep, savoring the decay. Every collapsed arch feels like another vein opened in Islam's corpse. You trail her with torch lifted, watching spores whirl in torchlight like gold flakes. In your mind a question pounds. When rot becomes victory, what separates conqueror from corpse? The queen's body begins to answer. Ulcers erupt along her inner thighs, small craters oozing honey-yellow fluid that glues silk to skin. She rides anyway, a pilgrimage north to dedicate a new chapel paid for by Columbus's gold. 400 miles of winter road rattle her joints. Every jolt grinds bone against saddle. At each village stop, she refuses the steaming copper tubs readied in her honor. When a maid accidentally splashes warm water on the queen's boots, Isabella strikes the girl with a gauntleted fist, leaving a lattice of cuts. Blood drips onto flagstones, mingling servants and sovereigns alike. The girl confesses her sin of premature baptism to the inquisitor that night. She is whipped, then ordered to carry chamber pots for life. Ferdinand no longer argues. He keeps separate apartments that reek of violet oil and contraband citrus soap, visiting his wife only for council meetings. At one such gathering, he mentions Portugal's new spice routes, riches enough to underwrite Rome's wars. Isabella, gaunt cheeks twitching, asks a single question. Will cinnamon mask the scent of hell? No one dares answer. When spring comes, so does plague again. This strain blackens the tongue, cracks the lips, and devours breath in hours. Courtiers scatter, abandoning fountains choked with dead swan. Isabella remains, convinced God would rather strike the unwashed saint than the perfumed coward. Yet even saints cough. One dawn you hear her retching behind woven screens, spitting clots that steam on cold flagstones. She wipes her mouth with a sleeve, already stiff from dried pus. Your stomach knots. If the queen dies, will her dirt die with her or infect the throne forever? She rallies, fueled by visions. At Vespers, she claims the archangel Michael visited, sword ablaze, demanding one final purge. Water itself must confess. Convinced, she orders every aqueduct in newly conquered towns inspected for Saracen enchantments. Masonry teams topple arches, rubble crashing into orchards, leaving whole districts dry. Children lap at puddles, livestock die where they stand. Still, Isabella rides on, face a parchment map of veins and shadows. In 1503, a Florentine envoy's sharp beard, sharper tongue dares gift her a crystal vial of attar distilled from Damascus roses. A drop upon your majesty's pulse will eclipse any earthly discomfort, he purrs. She snatches the vial, smashes it on the stone floor, Fragrance erupts, heady, cloying, heartbreakingly clean. Isabella inhales, once, twice. A tear tracks down the grime like rain carving canyon through desert. Then she grinds the shards beneath her heel, until her soul bleeds through torn leather. You see glass glittering in the wound, but she mounts her horse without flinching, leaving a trail of rose-scented blood. That same year, tales reach court of bathhouse miracles in France, survivors of plague scrubbed raw, then saved. Some advisors beg her, permit a single test, just one public washing to mock their pagan science. Isabella's smile is thin as a drawn dagger. Let them die clean, she says, and turns the page of her prayer book. Pages stick together. Blood, pus, sweat now indistinguishable from ink. Meanwhile, Columbus's riches pour in. But sailors bring more than gold. New fevers, parasites that burrow into skin, and hatch worms the length of a quill. Doctors slice sailors open, hauling spaghetti-thin parasites from calves and groins. Isabella watches a demonstration, nostrils fluttering. The doctor suggests hot baths of vinegar to kill the larvae. She orders vinegar poured onto bare earth instead, where it hisses like venom on rock. By autumn, her gait stiffens. She walks as though shackled. Some nights she cannot rise from the prayer stool. Courtiers whisper she sleeps, sitting, pressed upright between cushions to keep sores from sticking together. The sores have their own odor now, sweet, putrid, intimate. It drifts down corridors ahead of her, a spectral herald. Yet audiences still kneel, noses wrinkling, eyes shining with dread devotion. She has become myth made flesh, and myth cannot concede to soap. November 1504. Frost crusts olive leaves outside Medina del Campo. Isabella's pulse flutters like candlelight about to gutter. A friar pleads, "Allow at least your feet washed in holy water, symbol of pilgrim's rest." She closes eyes, sunken deep as forgotten wells. "If I break now, every stone I laid will crumble." Her voice is dust on dust. Midnight. Fevered dreams conjure Arevalo's brook, again cold water, trout flashing silver, laughter echoing across moss. She reaches towards memory, but her arms are heavy as lead. Instead, she feels hot slickness seeping from bandaged abdomen. The cancer has ruptured somewhere inside. Metallic tang fills the room, overpowering even her lifelong musk. She knows the scent. Final battlefields smell the same. She whispers to the darkness, "How many baths equal a kingdom?" No answer. Only the drip of her own blood onto rushes. Somewhere outside, church bells mark matins, the hour Christ sweat blood in Gethsemane. Isabella smiles blood and sweat, never water, bind the faithful to their crosses. Her breathing shallows. A flake of dried mud dislodges from her cheek, falls to her lip. She tastes earth one last time and thinks, "This is baptism enough." Dawn, on November 26, 1504, seeps ash-gray through narrow shutters, and frost feathers the inside of Queen Isabella's window panes. You sit vigil at the foot of her cot, quill motionless, parchment already spattered, with the rust-colored seepage that escapes each time her failing heart jerks. She has dictated codicils, all-night commands, forged from agony and iron. Joanna, the half-mad middle daughter, shall inherit Castile. Ferdinand retains Aragon only by oath, never to remarry a French bride. Every Jew or Muslim who claims baptism yet dares rinse in public fountains shall be seized by the Inquisition. Her voice frays, but conviction holds like a nail driven into bone. A gout of black blood splashes her pillow. The physician flinches. You see him mouth a silent plea for permission to cleanse the wound, but her glare stops him cold. Blood mats her hair into stiff cords, and lice crawl the edges, seeking new ground. One drops onto your ledger. You crush it with the quill tip, ink mixing with insect guts in a tiny imitation of the kingdom's own corruption. The stench inside the chamber is no longer merely human. Something necrotic ferments beneath her bandages. You think of butcher stalls in midsummer, how eels writhe in heaps of offal. The odor is that, plus soured milk, plus a whiff of incense from the chapel down the hall where 20 friars chant unbroken rosaries. They pray for a serene passage. Serenity is impossible here. Every candle flickers as gases leak from weeping sores, feeding invisible fires in the air. Outside, courtiers cluster like carrion birds. Some press pomanders to their faces, yet curiosity pins them in place. Will the unwashed queen relent at the threshold of eternity? Rumor flies. A silver tub, inlaid with pomegranates, waits in the next room, filled with water drawn from the Tagus before sunrise. Blessed by 3 bishops, Ferdinand had ordered it his last gambit to snatch a miracle from her withered hands. No one tells Isabella. She drifts into a half-sleep and dreams aloud. The words tumble, rough, arevalo, Alfonso, the brook. Her fingers twitch as though reaching for cool currents. Yet her nails, black at the crescents, rake only filthy linen. A scab tears from her forearm, yellow fluid beads, then traces down to the mattress. The sheets, once crimson damask, are now a mottled map of browns, ochres, and grays, every hue of bodily ruin. Mid-morning. Thunderless lightning flashes sunlight on polished helms as the royal guard changes post. Their boots strike stone in perfect cadence, a martial lullaby Isabella has always loved. Her eyelids flutter. She whispers, "Granada." Listen, it kneels again. Perhaps she hears phantoms surrender in each footfall. Perhaps she just hears death marching closer. A friar approaches with a thin wafer soaked in consecrated wine for viaticum. He pauses, horrified. Her lips are encrusted with dried pus, and the wafer would stick like plaster. He glances at you. In that instant, a terrifying possibility opens. Dab a cloth with warm water, just a thumbprint's worth, to moisten her mouth. Let the body of Christ glide in without tearing flesh. A single drop cannot betray a lifetime vow, can it? Your hand trembles over the ewer. The water gleams clear, innocent, a universe of mercy in a palm-sized cup. Then Isabella's eyes snap open, pupils burning green despite death's pallor. She sees the shimmer, understands, and rasp whispers. Stone cannot be softened by drizzle. The sentence is final. You lower the cup. The friar presses the dry wafer between her teeth. It fractures, shards grinding against ulcerated gums. Blood trickles. She swallows without sound. Noon bells toll. A chamberlain creaks open the door, whispering that the silver tub has cooled. Ferdinand waits within, hands trembling around a folded towel. He begs an audience. Isabella's lips curve, almost a smile, almost a snarl. "Tell the king," she says, each syllable clawing its way up a throat of thorns, "I saved his soul by keeping my promise. Let him save his own flesh as he wills." The chamberlain retreats. You hear footsteps recede toward the tub room. Hear the distant splash as Ferdinand, grief-stricken and reeking of guilt, plunges his arms elbow-deep into the blessed water. Perhaps he scrubs to blot the memory of his wife's scent. Perhaps he baptizes himself anew, hoping to rinse away responsibility for what comes next, an empire birthed in filth. Back in the sick room, a new odor rises. Ammonia. The queen's failing kidneys spill urine that steams in the cold. Servants scatter ash over the puddle, lest their sovereign slip on her own waist. The ash mixes with damp, forming paste that cakes beneath the bed, like mortar sealing her into a living tomb. Twilight smudges the windows. Isabella's breaths shorten tiny rattles, followed by aching silences. During one silence that stretches too long, the physician bows his head. Everyone sinks to knees. Then sudden, fierce, she inhales again, eyes flaring. With unexpected strength, she grips the iron bedrail and hauls herself half upright. The motion tears, bandages. A geyser of dark fluid spatters attendants. Gasps, screams. Someone vomits against the wall. Isabella speaks, voice louder than it has been in weeks. "Bear witness, unclean I lived, unclean I triumph." Head tilts back, tendons standing out like ropes. May no heir forget the price of one kingdom. A last breath hisses. Muscles slacken. Her fingers slide from the rail, smearing rust-brown arcs on the iron. Silence swells, broken only by the flutter of a lone moth batting against the guttering candle. You wait 5 beats. 10. The queen does not breathe again. The attending friar moves first. She has gone to judgment. Yet judgment cannot approach until the body is prepared. Custom demands bathing the dead, purification before burial. Courtiers exchange horrified glances. To wash her now would erase the mythology she forged. But to bury her as is invites flies, plague, scandal. Debate ignites in hushed, frantic hisses. Outside, a winter wind keens through cloisters, rattling the shutters like bones in a reliquary. In the hallway, the scent of violets drifts. Ferdinand, freshly laundried, approaches to behold his queen one last time. Behind him, shuffle priests with copper basins steaming over coals and bundles of linen. Decision looms. Soap or legend, hygiene or heresy. And you, chronicler to 2 crowns, must choose what history records next. Silence shatters when the Inquisitor General arrives hooded, black-robed, flanked by torchbearers whose flames paint sores on his cheeks. He scans the corpse, the filth-caked sheets, the copper basin steaming at the threshold. Her Majesty died in sanctity, he pronounces. To cleanse her now would profane a covenant with heaven. But the royal surgeon snaps back, voice trembling with revolt and desperation. Putrefaction has already begun. Within hours the queen will swell, split, and pour contagion through these halls. Lime and lead will not staunch the stench long enough to reach burial. A hiss ripples through courtiers. Piety claws at pragmatism. Every man's nostrils remind him which side is winning. Ferdinand stands motionless, violet-oiled and newly laundered. The contrast between his lavender aura and Isabella's rancid vapor as cruel as a slap. Eyes hollowed by sleepless regret. He weighs salvation of soul against preservation of legacy. Then Juana, thin, wild-eyed, hair half unbound, pushes forward. My mother's vow chained us all, she snarls. Grief twisted into mania. Her fingers worry a rosary until beads crack like seeds between teeth. Break the chain, burn the stink, or the demons that rode her sweat will ride our blood too. She reaches for the nearest basin, steam wafting rosemary and lye, intent on dousing the body herself. Guards seize her. Onlookers murmur La Loca under their breaths. The nickname sticks like burrs to mourning silk. Crisis spirals. A groom vomits, overcome by the rising sweetness of rot. Flies, hatched in the mattress reeds, erupt in a black humming cloud. They swirl toward torchlight, wings sizzling as they hit flame. The scent of insect ash merging with human decay in a new, unholy perfume. You, chronicler, gag behind your sleeve, yet keep writing, ink and bile splattering the margin. The Inquisitor lifts a crucifix carved from charred olive wood. Touch her with water, he warns, and your souls will blister as her flesh blisters now. His words vibrate against stone walls, and for a heartbeat, every man, woman, and maggot freezes. Fear wins. The basins retreat. The nuns back away. Juana collapses, sobbing into a heap of soot-dark skirts. Decision reached. Attendants seal the windows with pitch-soaked rags to muffle odor and prying eyes. They bind Isabella's jaw shut with linen so stiff it snaps at the knots. Her swollen tongue bulges beneath, purple as bruised plums. White wax is poured into her ear canals to halt leakage. More wax follows under eyelids that refuse to stay closed. Eyes the color of swamp water, peering half open at eternity. Next, the lead coffin, inner surface slathered in resin, sprigs of rosemary and thyme crushed into paste, lime powder spread like snowdrifts. Yet limestone cannot mask everything. When they lift the queen, her abdomen bursts with a wet pop, releasing gases that hiss across the chapel like escaping souls. Courtiers stagger. One knight tumbles against a marble column, helm clanging louder than any bell. Still they persevere. Silk burial gown never washed, never to be clings to ripped flesh. They wrap her in a shroud already infested with lice. Insects crawl between folds, prisoners locked into mausoleum with their empress. The coffin lid slams, soldered with molten tin that spits sparks. A priest dabs cedar pitch along seams, murmuring Gloria Patri between coughs. Outside, funeral drums roll. The cortege must march before dusk or risk mobs catching wind, literal wind of what lies within. Bearers strain to lift the coffin onto an ox cart draped in black velvet. Wheels creak as wood settles under ungodly weight. Lead, lime, legend. The procession lurches through palace gates into streets, slick with winter drizzle. Steam rises where rain touches coffin metal, as though the vow itself still sweats. People throng despite the weather, crossing themselves, gagging, pressing cloves to teeth. They cannot see the body, but the smell drifts a ghostly banner of ruin, and yet they cheer. Viva la Reina Católica! The paradox tastes of iron on your tongue. Children chant that Saint Isabella never washed, so Spain might be clean. Mothers yank them back, afraid the story will incubate disease in young minds, like spores in damp grain. Halfway to the monastery of San Juan, a wheel sinks into mud beside a slum where plague rotted whole families weeks prior. The ox cart jolts. Within the coffin something sloshes. A thin line of reddish seepage snakes from a seam despite pitch and solder, dribbling onto ground already pocked with graves. A dog darts forward, licks the fluid, and yelps, fur standing on end. Drummers falter. A whisper swells that the land itself rejects the queen's corruption. Engineers wedge timber under the wheel, lever the cart free. Ferdinand, following on horseback, shouts, to press onward any delay, invites rumors sharper than swords. Yet rumor gallops faster. By the time cortege reaches Medina del Campo, gossip claims the coffin bleeds like stigmata, heralding apocalypse. Panicked peasants bar church doors, refusing internment. So they turn south, hunting for a town still eager to cradle Spain's savior. Finally, Granada, the conquered prize, whose fountains once mocked her vow. The irony slices deep. She will rest beneath the city she drained dry. At the royal chapel, masons pry up a flagstone before the altar. They lower the coffin on ropes greased with tallow. Ropes smoke where seepage touches, scent acrid like burning hair. Lime is shoveled by the barrelful entombing vessel in caustic snow. The slab drops with a boom that echoes through nave and catacomb alike. Bells clang victory, mourning, terror, all at once. Outside, rain begins a lash of cold needles rattling on rooftops. For the first time in decades, water floods the streets of Granada unchecked, sluicing dust from gutters, washing donkey dung into cisterns, scrubbing Moorish tiles free of ash. Some swear they hear laughter in the storm. Others swear it's a scream. You close your ledger to keep pages from spotting with rain. One last duty remains. Craft the chronicle. What truth will you ink? That a kingdom built on filth now drowns in rumor? That the queen who refused cleansing left her people soaked in tears and fear? Or will you write the legend already sprouting like mold between altar stones, that Saint Isabella's holiness eclipsed the need for mortal purity? Your quill hovers, thunder grumbles reply. Somewhere under limestone and lead, liquids still shift, gases still swell. The vow, unbroken in life, seeps onward in death, an infection of history no lime will ever kill. Years slip by like tainted water under a cracked bridge, yet Isabella's vow keeps seeping through mortar, through memory, through the veins of a newborn empire. In 1516, when Ferdinand lies dying in Madrigalejo, the priest murmurs that his wife awaits him in sacred rest beneath Granada. Ferdinand's fingers, soft now from nightly rosewater soaks, clench at the thought. He whispers an order. When his coffin joins hers, open nothing. Lead must remain lead, he croaks. or the kingdom will gag on her ghost. But death is nosy. The following spring, masons break the chapel floor to lower Ferdinand's bier beside Isabella's. Lime-dusted air hangs thick as candle grease, while ropes creak. Far below, the slab covering her lead sarcophagus is pried aside, just enough to make space. A sexton leans too close and inhales a breath that has waited 12 years to escape. He staggers back, coughing, eyes watering. "It is still alive," he rasps. No one asks what it is. They hurry the king's coffin into the pit, slam stone shut, and flee the echo of unseen things fermenting in the dark. Up in the nave, Joanna, now Juana la Loca, by royal decree, paces barefoot, hair tangled like sea wrack. She sniffs the air, head cocked. "Mother never left," she hums. She's crawling through the walls. Courtiers shiver. Some cross themselves. Others eye the vaults uneasily. Madness, they decide, is just another contagion, one that wafts from tomb to throne, no matter how many candles burn. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, conquistadors claim rivers wider than dreams and cities paved in sorrow. They build missions, mine silver, lash natives to wagons, repeating Isabella's creed without knowing the source. Better to bleed for salvation than bathe in damnation. Smallpox rides beside them, a silent cavalry. Villages melt into graveyards before a single sword leaves its sheath. Priests call it providence. Survivors catch whiffs of European sweat, wool, tallow, stale garlic, and learn to fear odor the way others fear thunder. Filth becomes empire's passport. By 1539, scholars of Salamanca debate human humors and invisible vapors. One physician suggests public bathhouses again, citing Roman precedent. An archbishop silences him. Our greatest queen washed but twice. Rome fell in its fountains. Apothecaries bottle that verdict like poison, passing it down generations. Spanish sailors squeeze into damp holds for months, skin rotting beneath leather, and pray Isabella's ghost keeps scurvy at bay. Some claim they see her on moonless nights, pacing the deck barefoot, chainmail glinting where there is no light. They do not dare look twice. Decades later, plague revisits Castile with a vengeance none can ignore. Corpses pile so fast that lime runs short. Graves are shallower, the stench sharper than any memory of the unwashed queen. Municipal councils, staffed now by men who never saw Isabella, but still kneel at her legend, issue ordinances against bathing in public fountains, lest Saracen habits stir God's wrath further. The dead keep coming, rats squealing through alley gutters, slick with meltwater and bile. A few reformers wonder aloud if dirt is not holiness after all. But their words die the night Inquisition brands them aqua heretics. 4 generations on, 1574, Granada's cathedral roof weeps in a thunderstorm. Lightning snaps a gargoyle's wing, stone crashing through the chapel floor, splitting open the twin tomb. Lead buckles, lime scatters, and a churning stew of black fluids belches upward, hissing where it meets rain. Witnesses swear the smell knocks men unconscious 20 paces away. Monks in soaked habits drag the fallen outside, muttering exorcisms while they vomit into puddles. No one schedules repairs. They brick the breach with quarry stone and seal it in wax, entombing corruption within corruption. Pilgrims light candles anyway, convinced miracles breed in shadows that reek. Yet even wax and stone cannot silence the slow leak of myth. By 1600, satirists in Amsterdam print broadsheets lampooning Spaniards perfumed by sin. Across Protestant lands, nursery rhymes warn children that Isabella's lice still seek fresh scalps. Ships from Seville anchor abroad, and dockhands pinch noses, jeering Reina sin baños. The empire's enemies weaponize her memory. The empire itself doubles down, insisting holiness smells like iron and sweat and ashes. Time grinds onward. 1834. Liberal ministers briefly control Madrid and order royal graves inspected. Antiquarians descend with notebooks and chloroform-soaked handkerchiefs pressed to faces. They chip at lime, pry at lead, and recoil at what remains. A tangle of bones, chainmail scales, hair matted into a brittle helmet, all floating in tarry soup that still bubbles when stirred. One scholar records that, though nearly 3 centuries gone, the queen exuded an effluvium no science could classify, half mineral, half mortal, wholly infernal. They reseal the coffin in silence, agreeing no museum could contain such relic. Their report circulates in private, fueling occult rumors that Isabella's rot is philosopher's poison, capable of dissolving nations as surely as flesh. Modernity arrives with flush toilets and chlorohexidine, but even fluoridated taps cannot scrub her ghost. In 1918, Spanish influenza sweeps the globe. Journalists, ignorant yet poetic, blame Isabella's revenge, as though her vow exhaled across oceans to punish a world addicted to soap. Hospitals overflow. Nurses rinse corpses by the thousands. And still, the virus blooms. Somewhere in Granada, an old priest prays at the sealed slab. Mother of Spain, call back your breath. Echo answers, damp and empty. 2025. Tourists queue for selfies beside the royal chapel. Audio guides recite sanitized lore. Isabella, the patron of Columbus, the warrior queen, the Catholic monarch. Few mention the vow, fewer the smell. But late in the day, maintenance staff sometimes catch a whiff. Sharp, metallic, earthy as conditioners from 100 perfumed visitors stir stagnant cathedral air. They swap nervous jokes. The queen is checking up on them. At night, janitors mop the marble with industrial citrus cleaner, and the scent still returns by dawn, faint yet stubborn, like a stain beneath fresh plaster. Back in your own century, ink long dried, bones given to dust, the chronicle you penned remains in a dim archive, its margins freckled with the splatter of that lice-crushed dawn. Scholars argue its authenticity. Could odor really define an era? Yet each time the pages are turned, a fragile bitterness drifts free, preserved in paper fibers. Some claim it's just foxed parchment. Others, breathing shallow, swear they smell sweat and iron, and tallow smoke history's unwashed breath slipping from between the lines. So the vow endures. Filth as faith, faith as empire, empire as rot that refuses burial. Isabella of Castile bathed only twice, but the third baptism of a continent in conquest, of centuries in fever, never ends. Water will keep searching for her skin through cracked lead and crumbled myth, and every time it touches, the world will recoil and remember. Purity can be more putrid than decay.